Not all gasoline is created equal, and tonight we're proving it. Across America, 15 of the biggest fuel brands are quietly cutting corners. Some sell gas with barely enough detergents to protect your engine. Others let water rust or cheap additives slip through storage tanks and straight into your car. You won't see it, but your engine will feel it. In this journey, we'll show you 15 brands every driver should think twice before trusting, and reveal the hidden system that lets bad fuel pass as clean. You'll see how one small decision at the pump can decide whether your car lasts another decade or dies trying. Because what comes out of that nozzle isn't just liquid. It's a promised one that's broken more often than you think. And before this road trip ends, you'll know exactly how to tell the difference between the fuel that moves you forward and the one that quietly burns you down. Since this is a long journey, we'll divide 15 brands into 5 clusters to make it easier to follow. Each cluster reveals a different face of the same problem, how the gas we trust can quietly turn against us. First, we'll start with the price trap, the bargain pumps that trade short-term savings for long-term damage. Then comes the corporate shortcut, where familiar logos hide lazy chemistry and broken standards. Our third stop, the maintenance mirage, uncovers the neglected stations that look spotless but deliver sludge below the surface. After that, the additive illusion, the world of scientific claims, power boosters, and marketing smoke. Finally, we'll reach the imported gamble, where foreign blends and forgotten terminals decide the quality in your tank. Each section tells a story backed by fax drivers and the mechanics who see the truth firsthand. So buckle in, the road ahead may look familiar, but what we're about to discover isn't. The price trap. 7-Eleven. The first one in the price trap, unfortunately, is 7-Eleven. From the outside, it looks flawless, neon signs glowing through the evening air pumps, spaced evenly across a spotless forecourt, the faint scent of hot asphalt and brewed coffee drifting from the shop inside. Everything about it signals convenience and modern reliability. Yet what flows beneath that bright surface tells a different story. 7-Eleven. Gasoline is not top-tier certified, meaning it does not meet the voluntary additive and detergent standards developed by major automakers. That absence alone matters more than most drivers realize. AA testing found that non-top-tier fuel can leave intake valves almost 20 times dirtier than certified fuel. Those microscopic carbon layers are what dull throttle response, reduce fuel economy, and slowly grind away efficiency mile after mile. The trouble runs deeper than missing certification. In late 2023 at CITGO's Port of Tampa terminal, one of 7-Eleven's key suppliers, a batch of diesel was mistakenly blended into regular gasoline. The recall affected several retail chains, including 7-Eleven, and forced hundreds of drivers to seek repairs for stalled engines and clogged filters. It was an accident, yes, but it revealed a larger weakness, a supply chain built for speed, not scrutiny. However, the pumps kept humming and most customers never noticed. The signage stayed clean. The price board kept shining a few cents lower than the competitor across the street. Beneath that glow, though, the chemical story remained unchanged. Lower detergent fuel may ignite the same, but it fails to wash away carbon as the engine burns. Each ignition stroke leaves residue black film that clings to the back of valves and injector tips. Over months, that film thickens into hardened soot, changing how air and fuel mix and forcing the engine to work harder just to maintain the same output. In reality, those deposits don't appear overnight. They build quietly, the kind of damage you won't see until the check engine light blinks for the first time. By then, it's not a fuel problem anymore. It's an injector replacement, a costly cleaning, or lost mileage that never returns. That's why engineers treat detergent concentration as a safety margin, not an optional extra. It's the difference between a running engine and a reliable one. Beneath the surface, the math is simple. The price difference that looks so friendly at the pump, often 3 or 4 cents a gallon, saves less than $1 per fill-up, while risking hundreds in long-term maintenance. The physics of combustion doesn't care about branding, it only responds to chemistry. And the chemistry at many 7-Eleven pumps simply doesn't meet the protective threshold that modern engines need. So the next time that glowing red sign calls from across the intersection, remember what's behind it. A distribution chain willing to trade certainty for speed, and a blend that may not keep your engine as clean as its forecourt looks. The sign may glow brighter than the rest, but the fuel beneath it burns dirtier, proof that even a discount can leave a stain. Because in the end, the cheapest gallon isn't the one that costs less today, it's the one that keeps your engine alive tomorrow. 2. Murphy USA. You just paid $45 for a full tank and smiled at the numbers. It felt like a victory, another small win against rising prices. But victories at the pump are rarely what they seem. And behind that low number stands Murphy USA, a brand built to make affordability look effortless. At first glance, nothing feels wrong. $2.89 per gallon glows from the board, the pump handle fits perfectly in your hand, and the transaction clears in seconds. The rhythm of cheap fuel is comforting. Click, swipe, fill, leave. Yet every fraction of a cent saved is balanced by something else removed. Murphy USA keeps prices low by streamlining everything. Most of its stations sit beside massive superstores, feeding off foot traffic and weekly shopping runs. The business model depends on speed volume and uniform margins, not chemical precision. The fuel itself meets the federal minimum, but skips the stronger top-tier ETM standard that automakers created to protect valves and injectors. AA's controlled tests found that non-top-tier gasoline left intake valves up to 19 times dirtier after only 4,000 miles. The difference isn't visible at the pump. It's heard months later under the hood. Additives are the first thing sacrificed for cost. They're measured in cents per gallon, yet multiplied across millions of gallons. Those cents become entire balance sheets. By reducing detergent concentration or buying bulk blends from distributors, Murphy USA keeps its retail edge without breaking the law, just bending the chemistry. The fuel still burns clean enough for emissions tests, but it no longer scours away the residue combustion leaves behind. That residue builds slowly choking precision parts that were designed for cleanliness. There's also the matter of maintenance. High turnover deliveries leave little time for deep cleaning underground tanks. Moisture gathers, sediment sinks, and each refill stirs a new mix of particles that slip past filters. It's a cycle of convenience: quick truck, quick pump, quick sale, and each link favors throughput over purity. A friend of mine used to swear by Murphy USA. He liked the price, the location, the ease. But after replacing a pair of clogged injectors barely 5 years into ownership, his enthusiasm cooled. The mechanic didn't blame the car. He blamed the consistency of the fuel. Since then, my friend still drives the same route, but he fills up at a smaller regional chain that costs 4 cents more. He says the difference isn't just in the mileage, it's in the peace of mind. The engine idles smoother, the hesitation vanished, and for once the price board stopped deciding his routine. That story isn't an outlier. It's the quiet cost behind the savings we celebrate. Murphy USA didn't invent the trade-off, it perfected it. Low price through thin chemistry, high turnover, through quick logistics, stability, through compromise. So when you see those bright pumps lined up beside the supermarket, remember the math adds up only on paper. Out on the road, the numbers fade into maintenance bills, and the margin that made the company stronger leaves every engine just a little weaker. And that pattern doesn't end here. Speedway carries it forward, proving how the chase for volume reshapes the very meaning of quality. 3. Speedway, 2 stations, 2 signs, 2 prices. Yet they are one and the same. Since 7-Eleven bought Speedway, every gallon now flows through the same pipelines, the same terminals, the same accounting logic. The only thing that changes is the logo glowing above the pump. At first glance, the market looks alive, 2 red and white signs flashing from opposite corners, both promising the lowest price in town. In practice, both lead to one shared refinery supply, one contract for detergents, and one additive blend trimmed to the lowest legal limit. The $21 billion merger unified not only ownership but chemistry. In practice, that means the fuel inside those tanks is identical. Before the merger, Speedway used slightly richer detergent packages to differentiate its performance grade. Those are gone now. Detergency has been standardized to the bare minimum set by the Environmental Protection Agency, not the voluntary top-tier TM level automakers recommend. On paper, the gasoline meets the rules. Inside the engine, the story is different. When detergent concentration drops, combustion no longer cleans itself. Carbon particles that should have burned completely begin to cling to the metal. Each ignition stroke leaves a thin brown film on intake valves, injector tips, and piston crowns. With every heat cycle, that film polymerizes, turning to varnish. As varnish thickens, airflow through the intake ports changes shape, breaking the swirl pattern the engine relies on to mix fuel and air evenly. That's where efficiency starts to die. Uneven air distribution causes lean and rich pockets inside the combustion chamber. Valves no longer seat perfectly. Compression escapes fraction by fraction. Injectors coated with microscopic carbon start to dribble instead of atomize, leaving droplets that burn slower and hotter. The knock sensors adjust timing to prevent detonation, robbing power to save the pistons. The driver only feels it as a soft lag, but the engine feels it as stress. Farther downstream, oxygen sensors pick up the imbalance and command more fuel to compensate. Catalytic converters run richer than they should their honeycomb cores, collecting soot that should never exist in a healthy burn. Eventually, the exhaust gas recirculation passages, the tiny channels that feed clean air back into the intake, begin to clog. The system that once kept emissions low now fights its own residue. Every piece works harder to keep balance, and every part loses a little more of itself in the process. It's not sabotage, it's symmetry, a byproduct of consolidation disguised as choice. Two brands, one fuel, one silent degradation. Most drivers still believe they're choosing. They're not. They're paying the same price for the same diluted blend, a mixture designed for marketing simplicity rather than mechanical longevity. The difference that once separated budget from regular fuel has vanished, and with it, the quiet safety margin engines depended on for decades. By the time the forecourt empties for the night, the illusion still stands, twin price boards glowing in the mist, their reflections merging on wet pavement. Delivery trucks idle side by side, unloading from the same tanker through hoses that pump the same liquid into two names. The smell of fuel drifts heavy in the air, metallic and thick, a scent that feels less like progress and more like fatigue. Competition used to keep companies honest. Now the same hose fills every tank, and trust once again is the first thing sold. And from here, the story only widens. Because when saving pennies becomes a corporate strategy, the shortcuts don't stop at the station, they start at the top. The next chapter. The corporate shortcut begins there. To the corporate shortcut. Farpape. When it comes to corporate shortcuts, few companies have taken them as clearly or as confidently as BP. The green and gold logo shimmered like a promised cleaner energy, responsible production, and a new era of fuel that looked as good as it sounded. The brand's commercials showed sunlight reflecting off wind farms and happy drivers rolling down empty highways. But behind that polish, the chemistry was far less radiant. In August 2012, BP recalled over 50,000 barrels of gasoline distributed across Indiana and Illinois. The problem wasn't price or octane, it was polymeric residue, long hydrocarbon chains left behind after incomplete additive blending. That residue slipped through quality control coating injectors and clogging filters. Thousands of drivers found their cars idling, rough misfiring, or refusing to start altogether. Mechanics described a gummy, amber-colored film clinging to metal parts fuel that had turned into glue. On paper, the contamination was traced to one refinery batch, but the lesson ran deeper. When a company as vast as BP trims margins across supply lines, even a small chemical oversight echoes through entire states. Additive blending, especially detergent concentration, requires tight calibration between refineries and distribution terminals. When temperature, storage duration, or agitation timing changes, polymers form invisible to the naked eye but deadly inside a combustion chamber. A proper detergent package keeps those molecules dispersed, washing away carbon before it hardens. Cut the detergent and the residue begins to settle. Inside an engine, that settlement is slow corrosion. Injector tips start to drip, valves lose sealing precision, and oxygen sensors begin reading false data. Each correction the ECU makes adds more imbalance. What started as chemistry turns into mechanics, hesitation, pinging hard starts, and higher emissions. In truth, BP's marketing budget at the time dwarfed its additive investment. Beyond Petroleum was meant to signal progress, yet the fuel sold under that name still failed to meet the voluntary top-tier TM standards created by automakers to protect modern engines. The disconnect was symbolic, an image refined for trust sitting atop a formula refined for cost. Beneath the polish, the same pattern appeared again and again. Distribution contracts optimized for speed, reduced storage dwell time, good for profit, bad for stability. Terminal tanks cycled faster, giving additives less time to mix uniformly. The system didn't collapse, it just degraded molecule by molecule, pump by pump. Meanwhile, the brand's surface stayed immaculate. Stations gleamed, signage renewed, slogans refreshed. To the average driver, BP still looked premium, greener, cleaner, global. Yet the chemistry told another story. Detergent ratios flattened, additive costs trimmed, and oversight spread thinner than ever. Scale didn't fix the weakness, it multiplied it. That's the paradox of modern fuel empires. They grow too vast to fail, yet too efficient to stay pure. Every refinery cut, every blending shortcut, every penny saved on surfactant ends up somewhere, usually as carbon on an intake valve or sludge in a fuel filter. In the end, BP's logo stayed spotless even when the engines it fueled could barely run. Because reputation can be polished overnight, but residue once formed takes years to burn away. And this is where scale turns from strategy to risk. Because the next name in this chain, Circle K, shows that when oversight spreads too wide, even a single leak can flood everything below it. 5. Circle K. In 2024, Arizona's Department of Environmental Quality cited several Circle K stations for underground tank leaks and contaminated fuel releases. Customers reported engines sputtering, filters clogging, and water collecting inside fuel lines. The brand issued short statements promising investigation and repair. Yet beneath the corporate calm, the problem ran deeper than plumbing. It was structural. Circle K was never a petroleum company. It began as a neighborhood convenience chain in El Paso in the 1950s, thriving on snacks, cigarettes, and late-night groceries. Fuel came later, a side product of expansion rather than expertise. As the chain grew across states, gasoline became just another revenue stream attached to the storefront, like a vending machine. That retail DNA worked for coffee and candy, but not for chemical logistics. By the 2010s, Circle K's parent Alimentation Couche-Tard was one of the world's largest convenience networks. But with thousands of stations, the maintenance load turned invisible. Underground tanks aged unevenly. Some went decades without full replacement. Steel walls thinned, seals dried out. In warmer states like Arizona, temperature swings accelerated condensation. Water droplets collected inside tanks, forming micro pockets that mixed with ethanol, a process called phase separation. Once that happens, the heavier water ethanol layer sinks, waiting to be pumped into someone's car. Mechanically, even a small leak carries consequences. A teaspoon of water per gallon is enough to strip fuel of its lubricity. Injectors begin to rust. Microscopic pitting spreads across the nozzles. When that mixture burns, combustion falters not explosively but persistently. Spark plugs' foul exhaust turns acrid, and catalytic converters struggle to process incomplete burns. Engines stall not from lack of power, but from imbalance. Meanwhile, the brand kept expanding. Franchisees operated under unified signage, but with local contractors handling tank upkeep. Oversight stretched thin, inspections varied by region, and accountability blurred between corporate headquarters and licensees. The result wasn't sabotage, it was entropy. A system growing faster than it could be maintained. Consumer frustration followed quickly. Local forums filled with complaints about bad gas, rough idle, and fuel full of water. Some drivers claimed reimbursement, others switched stations. Circle K's defense was that incidents were isolated, but regulators saw a pattern: multiple sites with identical symptoms: tank corrosion, soil seepage, and water intrusion. The convenience empire had outgrown its own foundation. In the end, the issue wasn't a single leak or one bad batch. It was a model stretched past its mechanical limit. The brand's slogan promised "take it easy," but for engines across the Southwest, ease was exactly what disappeared. As one evening cooled into rain, a young man wrestled with a stubborn pump handle outside a Circle K. The nozzle kept clicking off, refusing to flow. His father stepped out from the passenger seat, took the handle, and said, "You've got to be gentle. These old tanks breathe air before they give gas." He smiled, then added softly, "That's Circle K for you, built for size, not strength." The sign above them flickered red against the puddle, its reflection trembling as the rain spread wider. Because sometimes the biggest leak in a corporation isn't in the tank. It's in the idea that growth alone is enough to keep it running. 6. Kroger Fuel. A long-haul trucker once said, "You can tell a station by the sound of its pump." At Kroger, the sound is clean, steady clicks, smooth flow, no leaks. But what's inside the line tells another story. Kroger was never a fuel company. It built its empire on groceries, not gasoline precision, in logistics, not in chemistry. By the early 2000s, when retail margins began to thin, Kroger saw opportunity in the parking lot. Adding pumps beside stores meant one more reason for customers to stay, one more item on the receipt, and one more stream of revenue flowing through the same corporate veins. It worked, at least on paper. Beyond the aisles, the model looked efficient. Grocery trucks came in, fuel trucks went out. But the chemistry wasn't as uniform as the branding. Unlike dedicated oil refiners, Kroger sourced from a patchwork of regional suppliers, each with its own refinery blend, additive package, and detergent recipe. Some contracts pulled from Phillips 66, others from Marathon or regional independents. Prices stayed low because no single supplier held control. Yet that same flexibility produced inconsistency. Chemically speaking, detergent packages aren't optional extras. They are the soap that keeps engines alive. When those concentrations drop even slightly below top-tier TM standards, deposits form. Incomplete burns leave carbon traces on valve faces and injector tips. Over time, those deposits harden, narrowing the path that fuel sprays through. Combustion turns uneven pressure, builds in waves instead of pulses, and knock sensors begin rewriting the ignition timing to keep the engine from tearing itself apart. By 2022, regional testing across the Midwest found Kroger's detergent content below the threshold automakers recommend. Engines run on those blends didn't fail. Suddenly, they just aged faster. Valve deposits measured thicker injector spray patterns grew distorted and compression numbers dropped millimeter by millimeter. Each refill added another invisible layer of residue. For Kroger, this wasn't scandal, it was arithmetic. Sourcing locally saved cents per gallon multiplied by millions of gallons. But in pursuit of logistical efficiency, the chain traded chemical consistency for convenience. Fuel became another SKU scanned, shipped, and shelved by the rules of retail rather than engineering. To the driver, the differences are subtle. One week the car hums. The next it hesitates on cold mornings. The numbers on the pump stay perfect. The numbers inside the cylinders slowly drift. The balance sheet looks healthy. The combustion doesn't. In the end, Kroger measured everything but the chemistry. The sensors, the tanks, the margins all optimized. The detergent ratios, the additive timelines, the calibration all assumed. What began as a grocery empire's expansion ended as a nationwide experiment in fuel by convenience. The trucker's words still hold true. You can tell a station by the sound of its pump. Kroger's pumps hum with precision, but that hum hides what the fuel leaves behind a thin gray coat of carbon on every trip home. Because when a company built on shelves starts selling gasoline, it treats chemistry like inventory, and engines don't forgive inventory mistakes. The groceries stay fresh. The fuel does not. And what's left inside the engine is the cost of convenience proof that scale without discipline always leaves residue behind. We've seen what happens when corporations cut corners on chemistry. But fuel doesn't end at the formula, it continues underground through pipes, pumps, and tanks that breathe with every season. And that's where the next illusion lives: maintenance that looks routine on paper but decays in silence. 3. Maintenance mirage. C'est Chevron. Chevron built its empire on 2 words: people and performance. Those words used to mean something. They hung on banners, appeared in training manuals, and echoed in the break rooms of refineries from California to Texas. But somewhere along the way, the ground began to rust. Because when the people maintaining the pipes lose faith, even the cleanest fuel starts carrying something heavier than carbon. For decades, Chevron was the model of discipline. Their internal manuals detailed everything down to how long a wrench should stay on a bolt before a pressure test. Crews rotated every 6 hours. Inspections happened like clockwork. It wasn't glamorous, but it was pride, a kind of invisible craftsmanship that made every gallon a promise. That promise still glows on billboards, Chevron with Techron, the science of clean. But under the slogan, the system began to strain. After 2018, budget rationalizations hit the franchise level. Each regional contractor had to maintain more stations with fewer hands. Tank checks that once occurred every 2 weeks stretched to 2 months. Filter changes, a 30-minute job that kept the pump breathing clean, became as needed. And when the pressure of daily quotas grew as needed, turned into maybe later. Beneath the pride, something shifted. The old maintenance technicians, many nearing retirement, saw their teams shrink. Younger hires came in with less training, more screens, and no sense of belonging to an engineering lineage. The new instructions were clear. Reduce downtime, increase throughput, meet the metric. Not maintain the machine, but optimize the cycle. Over the years, fatigue set in like corrosion on metal. One man might handle 5 or 6 sites, driving hundreds of miles each week, sleeping in his truck between visits. The pay barely covered fuel, but quitting meant losing healthcare for his family. At that point, the word safety stops meaning prevention, it becomes survival. Under pressure corners disappear. A technician notices moisture forming near the fill pipe, but logs it as condensation. A gauge reads lower than usual, but he knows calibration takes half a day, and half a day means missed deliveries. The next week, the same tank begins to grow microbial film. A faint smell, a thin brown residue, and the first hint of contamination. From there, chemistry starts breaking down detergents, separate oxidation blooms, and corrosion eats through what used to be precision. Regulatory records confirm it. Between 2021 and 2024, several Chevron and Texaco stations across California and Nevada failed inspection for corrosion and tank seepage. Not because the fuel was bad, but because the people behind it were too tired to keep it good. The brand's discipline had become its illusion-strict manuals but looser hands. And yet most of these workers stay. They show up before dawn, open valves, test pressure, fill out forms. Some still wipe the metal clean before closing the lid, not for compliance, but out of old habit. The kind of respect that doesn't earn a bonus but keeps a man human. Because the truth is, the fuel isn't just the fuel, it's also the one who maintains the pump, the man whose pulse aligns with the vibration of the ground. And when his spirit erodes, the corrosion above it is only a matter of time. As one technician whispered before walking out for the night, "I can't quit. My kids eat off this pump." And in that single sentence, you can hear what's really burning beneath the ground. ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil doesn't break down, it optimizes. At least that's what the corporate reports say. But optimization has a cost that balance sheets can't capture. When maintenance is managed by dashboards instead of hands, what gets repaired isn't what's broken, it's what's visible. In 2023, ExxonMobil's CEO Darren Woods told investors, "We're redefining efficiency with data-driven performance at every level." It sounded visionary, and to many it was. But within the company's sprawling retail network, that vision turned maintenance from discipline into math. Inspection frequency became a metric, not a safeguard. Human intuition, the sound of a pump before it fails, the smell of vapor after rainfall, disappeared from the checklist. Behind the dashboards, local contractors found themselves managing entire regions through tablets and email. Physical inspection gave way to remote readings. Sensors tracked vapor pressure, fuel flow, and leak rates in real time. But technology is only as good as the people maintaining it, and those people were being thinned out. Budget reductions cut field teams by up to 20% in certain districts, according to audit logs from 2022 to 2024. The spreadsheets glowed green while the gaskets beneath them cracked. One mechanical engineer who consults for multiple state fuel boards explained it bluntly. The first thing you lose when you replace inspection with automation is smell. Machines don't smell rust, they measure numbers. But corrosion doesn't care about decimals. It's not that the technology failed, it's that the philosophy shifted. ExxonMobil once prided itself on over-maintenance, replacing parts early, inspecting, even when readings looked fine. But with modern optimization goals, those habits became inefficient. A valve that lasted 2 years was stretched to 3. A seal with early wear was labeled within tolerance. The illusion of precision replaced the culture of prevention. From a technical view, the results were subtle but cumulative. Vapor recovery systems critical for keeping emissions low began to leak undetected. Fuel dispensers uncalibrated for months underperformed in flow accuracy. In certain regions, the underground piping showed microscopic pitting early corrosion that sensors couldn't detect. The data looked perfect, the metal didn't. Experts from the Petroleum Equipment Institute have long warned that data-based maintenance without field verification accelerates unseen decay. Their term for it is statistical blindness, when engineers trust the patterns so much they forget to look at the pipe. ExxonMobil's system was a textbook case. By 2024, regulatory filings confirmed a pattern of deferred maintenance and vapor leak violations. The official reason cited was resource realignment. But to those who worked under the system, it was simpler. There were fewer boots on the ground and more numbers in the cloud. In the end, ExxonMobil's precision became its disguise. Every gauge, every graph, every report said within limits. Only the steel underneath told the truth. Machines don't fail all at once. They fail by spreadsheet one, unchecked box at a time. Because the next illusion isn't digital, it's physical. Old metal pretending to be modern, patched and painted to look alive. Navze Valero. Compared to ExxonMobil's world of data dashboards and remote diagnostics, Valero looks refreshingly tangible. Real workers, real stations, bright paint, fresh signs. But that's the illusion. Exxon hides its decay behind numbers, Valero hides it behind color. And both in the end leave corrosion to do what it always does, work in silence. Drive by a Valero station at night and it gleams like a postcard from the future. White LED canopy lights hum above spotless concrete. The pumps shine, the logo glows gold and blue, and the air smells faintly of detergent and fuel, a scent meant to reassure, not reveal. But just a few feet below, time tells a different story. Much of what carries that fuel underground was welded decades ago. Some pipes still date back to the 1990s, refurbished but never replaced. In 2023, reports from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality found multiple Valero and affiliate sites with aging underground piping, corrosion-related seepage, and incomplete compliance repairs. The problem wasn't lack of inspection, it was the type of inspection. Valero's documentation was immaculate. Its pipelines were not. Restored often meant repainted. Upgraded meant relabeled. Valero's rise as an energy empire happened fast. Through acquisitions of independent refineries and smaller retail chains, it inherited thousands of old assets tanks, pipes, and dispensers designed for a different era of fuel. Some of those systems were never intended for modern ethanol blends. Ethanol by its chemistry attracts moisture. That moisture seeps into microcracks, reacts with old steel, and slowly turns it brittle. The metal doesn't scream, it just sweats one drop at a time. Most of these tanks aren't failing explosively, explained Dr. Daniel Hargrove, a petroleum systems specialist who has inspected multiple Gulf Coast sites. They fail by sweating microscopic leaks that last year's. Fresh paint just hides the damp. It's what the industry calls cosmetic maintenance, when the schedule focuses on what the customer can see, not what the system actually needs. Power wash the concrete, paint the pipes, replace decals, take photos for compliance reports. It all looks orderly, but no corrosion ever sees the brush. Chemically speaking, rust doesn't need negligence, just time and air. Even the best coating loses adhesion when exposed to ethanol vapor, and when that happens, oxidation resumes from beneath the seal. Soil moisture accelerates the process, especially in humid regions like Louisiana or Florida. Once the coating bubble's oxygen enters, and what looks like a new pipe from above is already dying from within. Over time, this becomes cultural, not just mechanical. New managers learn to maintain the illusion because the illusion sells. Appearance becomes asset, and truth becomes liability. It's a trade-off repainting faster than rust can climb. So what should a driver do when faced with such mirages? Don't be dazzled by shine. Observe patterns in stead stations that repaint too often, that smell faintly of solvent that always look new. These are the ones worth questioning. The safest fuel isn't sold by the brightest light, it's sold by the brand that invests where customers never look underground. Because after all the rust fatigue and illusions, what's left isn't just bad maintenance, it's bad faith. And that brings us to the next truth. Not every brand remember how to care. IV the branding illusions. 10 Phillips 66. We're all drawn to patriotism, be honest. A flag waving above a gas station feels like a promise this place belongs to us. Phillips 66 knows that better than anyone. They've built an empire on that feeling, turning loyalty into luxury and heritage into a premium illusion. You see it everywhere, the red shield, the silver numbers, the name that sounds like a road trip through time. The light hits the chrome in just the right way. There's always a flag somewhere in frame, flapping against a sky the color of motor oil and morning sun. The voice in the commercial speaks low, steady, reassuring American fuel for American roads. It's comfort disguised as commerce. A story told 1,000 times and believed 1,000 more. Phillips 66 was born on the road itself. It carried the myth of the open highway of grit and independence of a country that never stopped moving forward. For generations, that image worked because it felt earned. You could pull up to a pump, smell the faint diesel in the air, and believe that everything from the pipeline to the nozzle was made and refined right here at home. That belief became the brand. But time has a way of blurring lines, especially the ones between pride and profit. Today, Phillips 66 operates less like a local hero and more like a global trader. Over the last few years, a growing share of its base fuel components, the very hydrocarbons that make up its gasoline, have come from overseas refineries, Asia, Europe. Blended, shipped, and refined again under U.S. supervision, before being sold under the same proud banner. There's nothing illegal about that. The chemistry checks out. The problem isn't the formula, it's the framing. American refined doesn't always mean American made. Refining is the final act in a long global chain. But the logo, the flag, and the heritage are meant to make us forget that. Patriotism becomes part of the price, a surcharge of sentiment. Walk into a Phillips 66 station and you'll notice it's carefully designed to feel timeless. Warm light, retro typography, red and silver tones that echo the optimism of the 1950s. It's nostalgia engineered to feel familiar no matter your generation. Every detail whispers, this is home. But chemically, it's no different from the fuel at a cheaper stop down the highway. The difference is what's printed on the receipt and what it makes you feel when you drive away. That's the real trick of the patriotism premium. It's not deceit, it's direction. We want to believe in the symbol so much that we stop asking what's behind it. Pride fills the tank before the gasoline does. And so the brand keeps shining, even as the truth grows dull. At dusk, when the highway stays silent, the station still hums under its glowing flag. The colors don't fade even when the customers do. A single pump keeps running beneath a banner that once meant something bigger, now waving for fewer and fewer to see. Because patriotism still sells, it just doesn't fuel. Wanting a Sunoco. Speed sells. Sunoco knew that long before influencers and algorithms did. The roar of engines, the blur of chrome, the flash of blue and yellow across the track. It's not just advertising, it's adrenaline. Every sound, every spark, every trophy moment is built to sell one message: this is the fuel of champions. But in truth, most of those champions never stop here. For decades, Sunoco has wrapped itself in the glow of the racetrack. The company has been NASCAR's official fuel supplier since 2004, and that partnership has become its beating heart. Every logo placement, every race day broadcast, every pit crew shot reinforces the same promise that what flows through the tanks of professional drivers is the same energy you pour into your own car. It's an elegant illusion built on speed and sound. Under the hood, though, chemistry tells a different story. The gasoline used in NASCAR races is a tightly controlled Sunoco Green E15 blend, a high-octane formula designed for engines that run at over 9,000 RPM. It's engineered for short bursts of maximum combustion and contains special anti-knock agents that wouldn't even be compatible with most consumer vehicles. The everyday Sunoco gas sold at your corner station. It's blended regionally using base stocks from multiple suppliers designed for durability and cost efficiency, not competition. That's not a scam, it's a strategy. Sunoco learned that the image of performance is easier to maintain than the chemistry of it. The track became their theater and the logo their main actor. The company built a brand not on what it truly sells, but on what it wants you to feel that you're part of the race, even when you're just driving home from work. Chemically speaking, there's no secret race-grade additive waiting to ignite in your engine. The octane rating you see 87, 89, 93 is standard across the industry. But when the nozzle clicks at a Sunoco station, you're buying something else: the echo of speed, the illusion of mastery, the taste of competition turned into routine. Their marketing has evolved with precision. Slogans like "fueling champions" and "official fuel of NASCAR" aren't lies, they're half-truths. They rely on proximity, not proof. Just close enough to make you believe that filling up here connects you to greatness, but far enough to never be tested. The power of suggestion does the rest. And it works. The same logo that shines under stadium lights also glows above long suburban roads. A mom fueling her minivan sees the same yellow arrow as a professional driver on the track. Two worlds linked by color, not chemistry. That's the genius and the danger of emotional branding. Because in the end, the car doesn't care about symbols. It cares about stability, octane, and maintenance. Performance isn't about how loud your fuel is advertised, it's about how long your engine keeps running clean. Sunoco mastered the art of selling motion even when the car never leaves the speed limit. And as those blue and yellow pumps hum under the same sky, they remind us of one truth: illusion burns just as bright as gasoline, but never lasts as long. Smooth marathon? He used to stop there every morning, same marathon station, same old man behind the counter, same little flag fluttering beside the icebox. It felt good, predictable. A handshake, a paper cup of coffee, a full tank, and a few words about the weather. It was the kind of station that made you believe community still meant something. Until one day the old man was gone, the lights looked colder, and a small sign on the counter quietly read, "Under new management." He didn't think much of it until he started looking closer. The friendly local energy poster still hung by the door, but the fine print led to a corporate address 2 states away. The new attendants didn't live nearby. The receipts no longer listed the town's name. The community fuel slogan was still painted proudly on the pump, but the community itself, that part had disappeared. That's the truth behind Marathon Petroleum, a brand that sells belonging more than fuel. Its logo might sit next to small-town diners and truck stops, but the engine behind it is anything but small. Marathon is one of the largest petroleum operators in the United States, owning and distributing through thousands of franchise stations under the same local-friendly design. It presents itself as part of the neighborhood, but in practice, it's the neighborhood that bends around it. In 2021, Marathon closed multiple regional refineries across the Midwest, cutting hundreds of local jobs while converting some facilities to renewable diesel production. The press releases framed it as a step towards sustainability, but internal audits later revealed serious maintenance backlogs and community disengagement during the transition. It wasn't malice, just management math. When efficiency wins, empathy loses. Underneath the community branding lies a modern supply web, central logistics, regional blending, remote maintenance teams. There's nothing local about it. The smiling employee at the register may wear a marathon shirt, but his paycheck comes from a subcontracted operator who answers to an entirely different office. The posters still speak of neighborhood values. The system runs on corporate consolidation. That doesn't mean Marathon's fuel is bad. It just means the story around it is better than the product itself. Because in the race to seem small, sincerity became a strategy. Every flower bed, every local charity photo, every supporting our town slogan exists to soften the edges of a vast corporate structure. The illusion works because it feels harmless, but that's what makes it powerful. He stood there one evening watching a delivery truck fill the underground tanks. The driver didn't wave. The sign flickered once, then steadied. The air smelled faintly of gasoline and cut grass. For a moment he realized the brand hadn't lied. It just learned how to speak the language of trust without earning it. So how do you deal with branding illusions like this? Simple: don't buy the story, buy the standard. Read where your fuel comes from. Notice who owns the license, who runs the station, who answers when there's a leak. Look past the logo and into the system. Because in a world of illusions, awareness is the only real filter left. And as for Marathon, maybe community isn't something you find at the pump anymore. Maybe it's what we rebuild when we start asking better questions. We've seen local lies now, it's time to cross the border. This is the imported gamble. The part where the story goes global, where cheap blends and long supply chains hide the real cost of a full tank. Sometimes the dirtiest fuel doesn't come from the pump, it comes from distance. The imported gamble. 1376 gas. It looks as American as the highway itself, that orange ball, the number 76 glowing against the blue sky. You see it on old postcards and road movies on the corner of small towns where the diner still smells like pancakes and diesel. It's the kind of brand that feels like home, a leftover from when cars were bigger, roads were longer, and everything felt local. But behind that warm glow lies a faraway truth. Because much of what fills your tank here doesn't even come from here. The 76 brand is owned by Phillips 66, a company that operates one of the world's largest petroleum trading networks. Beneath the patriotic logo, its fuel-based stock often originates from refineries in South Korea, Singapore, and the Middle East, shipped halfway around the world before being mixed, blended, and labeled as American refined. It's a logistical ballet of barrels, contracts, and tankers, all designed to keep the illusion alive that the pump around the corner is still part of the same country as the driver filling it. At first glance, it feels harmless. Gas is gas, right? As long as it burns clean and gets you home, who cares where it started? But that distance carries a cost, and not just in dollars. Each extra link in that global chain adds a layer of opacity, more storage, more blending, more hands in the pot. By the time that fuel reaches your local station, its journey spans ports, tank farms, and refineries that operate under different safety and environmental rules. The orange logo hides that ocean. In practice, imported base stocks can vary in sulfur content, detergent levels, and stability during long transit. None of that is visible on the pump. The label still says top-tier detergent gasoline, but that certification only guarantees detergent standards, not origin integrity. The chemistry remains compliant, but the accountability drifts farther away from a refinery you can't visit to a cargo ship you'll never see to a supply chain with more paperwork than oversight. This is what makes 76's distant blend dangerous, not because the fuel is toxic, but because the story is incomplete. It's comfort built on distance. The company knows the emotional weight of nostalgia. It's built into the brand itself. That orange ball isn't just a logo, it's memory, it's trust. And that trust has been traded for convenience. In some ports, you can still see the tankers lined up, silver hulls reflecting the same orange circle painted near their bow. Thousands of miles from any American highway, they're loading the liquid that will one day flow through a pump that says, "Proudly serving our communities." The irony doesn't burn, it hums steady, mechanical, and far away. So what does that mean for us, the drivers? It means we can no longer treat gasoline as a local product. Every gallon is a passport stamped with invisible miles. Every price cut hides a journey. And every logo is only as honest as the distance it conceals. The orange ball still spins in the wind, bright, familiar, and thousands of miles away from where the story begins. Fjörin Arku, how cheap should gas be before it stops being worth it? It's a question few people ask when the numbers on the sign drop lower than the station across the street. You pull and swipe your card and feel like you've won a small victory in a country where everything else keeps getting more expensive. That's Arco's genius. It sells relief, not fuel. But every relief has a cost, and this one is buried deep inside the barrel. For decades, Arco, once proudly American, now a subsidiary of BP British Petroleum, has built its name on one promise: the lowest price. The logo shines above highways and suburbs like a discount beacon. And for many families, it's a lifeline. But behind that glowing triangle lies a network stretched across oceans, a system where savings are measured, not just in dollars, but in oversight. To stay cheap, Arco runs on what BP calls a lean supply model. That means limited additives, minimal advertising, and aggressive sourcing from foreign suppliers in Singapore, South Korea, and the Persian Gulf. It's efficiency by design, importing semi-refined base stocks, finishing them in domestic blending terminals, and cutting every non-essential layer of cost along the way. The result: a gallon that costs less at the pump, but travels farther than your car ever will. On paper, it works perfectly. Each tanker shipment saves BP millions in refining overhead. Each cut in detergent additives saves pennies per gallon, multiplied by billions of gallons a year. The company gets to market it as value-driven, accessible, and simplified, and consumers get to save a few cents that feel like a small rebellion against inflation. But chemically speaking, those few cents come at a hidden price. Imported base fuels, when stored for long transit periods, can degrade in stability and volatility. Lower additive concentrations mean fewer detergents to clean injectors and valves over time. Small compromises repeated daily, nothing noticeable at first, until your car begins to idle, rough burn unevenly, or lose mileage. It's not sabotage, it's math. Arco insists their fuel still meets every EPA and top-tier regulation, and technically they're right. But meeting a standard isn't the same as maintaining one. Independent mechanics have long observed the difference between fuels that barely pass and those that exceed, and Arco's blend, by its very structure, is built to do just enough. Behind the discount lies dependence. Because when you rely on imported crude and blended stock, you're not just buying oil, you're buying risk. Every geopolitical tremor, every port delay, every refinery disruption halfway across the world ripples directly into your tank. The savings that start at the pump can vanish overnight in volatility or scarcity. Still, Arco's pumps remain crowded. The bright signs, the clean pavement, the low numbers, they all whisper the same message. You're being smart. But smart in this system only means short-term. The truth is quieter. The cheaper the fuel, the less control you have over where it comes from, how it's handled, and what it leaves behind. So next time the price feels like a win, remember the math that makes it possible wasn't written for you. The pump still says low price, but the real cost is written in the miles your engine will never get back. 15 Citgo. You don't think of politics when you buy gas. You just see the sign, the red triangle glowing in the distance, and you pull in because it's familiar. Same hum of pumps, same smell of gasoline, same small relief that your tank will be full before the rain starts. But behind that ordinary stop is one of the most politically tangled brands in America, Citgo, the quiet gas station that runs on diplomacy as much as diesel. Citgo isn't just another chain. It's a US-based company wholly owned by PDVSA Petróleos de Venezuela S.A., the state oil company of Venezuela. And that connection turns every gallon sold here into part of a geopolitical puzzle. Since 2017, PDVSA has been under heavy US sanctions due to its direct ties to Nicolas Maduro's government. That means Citgo's profits, debts, and control have all been suspended between legal courts, diplomatic deals, and international creditors. To most drivers, that sounds abstract, but in practice, it means Citgo is a brand divided by borders. Its corporate headquarters sits in Houston, but its parent company answers to Caracas, at least on paper. The US froze its ownership rights, appointing interim boards, while courts decide whether Citgo should repay Venezuela's debt or compensate companies once nationalized by the regime. Every headline about sanctions, oil seizures, or diplomatic standoffs echoes through the quiet hum of Citgo's pumps. The irony is that Citgo's public image couldn't be calmer. Its commercials still speak of reliability and trust. The station still waves small American flags beside their red triangles, and the prices, often competitive, keep customers coming back. But what people don't see are the court filings, the frozen assets, and the diplomatic cables behind every tanker shipment. Because Citgo's supply chain now depends not only on economics, but on politics, where each decision requires permission, clearance, or negotiation. Politically speaking, it's fuel by proxy. The United States allows Citgo to operate but holds it hostage in policy. The Venezuelan government claims ownership but can't touch a cent of its profits. And in between those two realities stand thousands of independent franchisees, employees, and customers who just want to sell or buy gas. It's commerce tangled in consequence. For consumers, the danger isn't contamination, it's uncertainty. When supply depends on geopolitics, stability becomes an illusion. A sanction in Washington or a courtroom ruling in Delaware can ripple all the way to a small town in Kentucky. A legal freeze can delay shipments. A new diplomatic stance can change sourcing overnight. And the customer standing under that glowing red triangle remains blissfully unaware that their purchase is part of a foreign policy chessboard. Citgo keeps running because it must. Too many jobs, too many local stations, too much infrastructure depends on it. The pumps stay open, the lights stay on the logo, keeps shining red, sharp, and silent. But the truth is, Citgo is no longer a company. It's a compromise, a temporary deal between governments that disagree but still need each other's oil. So the next time you see that triangle glow against the night sky, remember, not every gallon is just fuel. Some carry politics, history, and debt. Because when fuel turns political, the consumer stops being a customer and becomes collateral. Citgo isn't just a gas station, it's a reminder that in the modern world, every drop of oil answers to someone. From hometown pumps to foreign tankers, the story has come full circle. Every brand, every bargain, every logo carried the same pattern distance disguised as trust. But awareness changes everything. Because once you know how this system works, you stop being a passenger and start taking the wheel. Gasoline will always be political, profitable, and perfect, but your knowledge is the cleanest fuel there is. So the next time you fill your tank, remember the engine never lies. It only runs on truth, and that's something no brand can refine.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.